Okay, my speaker. So I do have some light now. It looks almost like a night light though. It's kind of funny. Um, but we are going to go ahead and get started. There was one person that was supposed to attend this event. However, they have not um, joined into the chat, which is totally fine. It happens. But I got on my blue shirt today. So we are blue and pink mascots. And what we will do is we will go ahead and get started with our teaching for today. And then, of course, all of the resources that you need will be in the description box, as well as if you have selected to subscribe to our newsletter, you can always find the links that you need in order to get this lesson again there, as well as any upcoming events we plan on hosting. And lastly, any additional links you may need to subscribe or enroll yourself into coaching. So let's get started. We will be sharing the PowerPoint today. So here's the PowerPoint. All right, so today's lesson is about maximizing your potential. Essentially, our goal here is to create a space where we are thinking about the version of ourselves that we want to be as well as who we are. I'm not a big person that feels that if you wanted to be a better person or a different person that you need to discard who you are currently because we all take our current version as well as our previous versions of ourselves into the future with us. However, I do understand that sometimes we want to capitalize on a certain idea of who we are or a certain concept of what we want to invoke in our day-to-day life. So this isn't about changing who you are unless you want to change. This isn't about being a different person or copying somebody other or discarding who you are to be able to become someone different per se. This is about an individual who wants to accomplish more and do more in their current life because they're happy with who they are or they see themselves wanting to be a bigger version or a louder version or a more vibrant version of themselves. So that's what we're looking at today. So for today's lesson, we will be going over all of these sections. We will talk a little bit about SMART goals, weekly plans, yearly plans, exercises, like a to-do list, monthly planners, goal overviews, as well as notes and reminders. So if you want, you can definitely take out a pen and paper so that you can take notes, as well as we do open the floor for conversation. So if there's any insight or input or any thoughts that you might have or any emotions or ideas that anything that is shared invigorates you to want to share with us as well, please go ahead and leave that in the comments as well as during our live sessions. We do leave space for open conversation. So if there's a slide that we go over and there's different concepts that are covered, you are more than welcome to, put your hand up or put into the chat or chime in certain things that you may want to share that's related to that particular slide or that particular part of the conversation. So let's begin. So, when it comes down to maximizing who you are and who you want to be, like I said, this is not a conversation about discarding who you are currently. This is a conversation that is rooted in becoming a more enhanced version of yourself, a more directed version of yourself, as well as a more, if this is going to sound funny in the phrasing, but a more goal oriented version of yourself. So ultimately, like I said, I do not believe innately that anybody in their current situation is bad or good or a failure or anything like that. I think that there's times in our life or seasons in our life where we are who we are and that serves who we need to be in that moment. It serves whatever goals that we have or whatever aspirations that we have. But then sometimes in life we want to do things differently or we want to have a new or a fresh or a better outcome in life. And with that being said, that requires for us to take some action and some goal and set some goals to be able to curate that type of lifestyle or create that type of self-concept or create that level of self-regard and self-esteem. Piggybacking off of that concept, one key thing to keep in mind are some of the sizable goals that we want to accomplish and achieve for each other. All right, so we are going to go ahead and jump back a slide. I did go ahead and create this slide quickly, but one thing that I want to keep in mind before we move forward to this next slide is some sizable goals. So, kind of having good ideas and concepts before we walk into what we plan on accomplishing and achieving in our next steps is super essential. So, some sizable goals to keep in mind and some perspectives essentially to keep in mind would be, what is your vision? So, first, it takes a little bit of time, and I would admit, depending on your situation, what you have going on in your personal life, what type of things are in your environment or people who are in your circle, sometimes it may take some time to even have a vision of what you want or what type of lifestyle you want to live. I think sometimes we have it depends on the situation, but sometimes, depending on your life, you have kind of a routine built out with things that you do on a daily basis, different goals that have been produced from our society or outlined from our society that tells us that we're supposed to do X, Y, Z, or we're supposed to conform to a specific type of thing. Like the first example that comes to mind is in certain families, your parents or your family or your community expects for you to go to college, become a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer, and that's the only thing that's outlined for you. And sometimes that's okay. Like I said, I'm not an individual who takes sides on whether this thing is right or wrong. It is all subjective based on the person and what calls them to that kind of calling. However, when it comes down to certain expectations that's placed on us, sometimes things are mapped out already, so it doesn't take us a long time to create a vision around it or to envision ourselves in these type of lifestyles or scenarios or situations. And then sometimes it might take you some time. It might take you some experiences. It might take for you to hear from other individuals about what happened to them and their story, and that kind of curates a new perspective for you. So, in contrast to an individual that may already have a life kind of picked out for them or that have a vision for their life, sometimes you might go through life. For example, envision yourself being, a young woman who gets married in her early 20s, starts a life, becomes a stay-at-home mom, and lives her 20s, 30s, 40s raising children. And then by time her late 40s to early 50s, after her kids, if not all of them, have graduated high school and or are on their way to college, and essentially they're out doing their own thing. They're building their own life. At this point, this woman might have realized that not only can she not be a stay-at-home mom anymore because kids are gone technically, but maybe there's something that she encountered while raising her kids, maybe an experience that she had or a conversation that planted a seed, or even just the flexibility of wanting something different or having something different has encouraged this individual to take on more sizable goals to become a different or a maximized version of themselves. Something like that, like I said, might take 20, 30 to 40 years for a person to realize. You can even take an example of just, focusing in on women, how a lot of women were not allowed to go to college in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and even the 70s and 80s. There were a lot of limitations, restrictions, and burdens that women faced that prevented them from going to college. So if an individual was adult age in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and they were not able to accomplish an education at that time, now things might be a little bit more different for them just because our environment, our society has changed over time. So, with this in mind, this person could now dive into even financial aid resources that may or may not have been available at the time, so that they can utilize this opportunity to become the paleontologist that they always envisioned themselves to be, or the nurse, or the architect, whatever it might be, even the creative. There's great creative degrees that a person could accomplish or pursue as well. So sometimes it takes time for us to create our vision. So this is not, a conversation about you having a perfect vision or you knowing exactly what you want. But what I would rather you focus on currently is what do you envision yourself, your situation, and your life to look like? That could be in the next 7 days, that could be in the next month, that could be in the next 6 months, and that could be in the next year to 10 years. What is that goal? What I do invite for you to do is take on a sizable goal for yourself that is accomplishable as well as not overwhelming to you. I think a lot of times in our society, just because of some of the rhetoric that is out there, a lot of times we end up jumping into these extremely large goals because that's what YouTube said or that's what an influencer said. And sometimes it's better just to have a small goal. So, for example, I would say even a small goal could be over the next 30 days, I plan to drink more water. Super straightforward, super digestible. And the result could be you just want to have a healthier lifestyle. It doesn't have to be for a competition or a race or to lose weight or anything like that, a diet change. It could just be overall so I could be healthier. I plan to drink more water over the next 30 days. So that brings us into our step two, which is planning for what you want. So, sure, you may want to drink more water over the next 90 days, but what is your plan to get there? Does that look like adding, like I've seen in the store, there's like different kind of juices that you can add or like flavoring you can add to your water so that it gives your water more life. I've seen people add different electrolytes and other kind of powders to their water so that it is quote unquote healthier water to drink. I've also seen people utilize a different method of taking in more broths as well as like fruit or vegetable water so that they're taking in more vitamins. So, what is your plan to get there? Another part of a plan could be to make sure that you invest in a water bottle because you might not have a water bottle. So that way you can always have a giant water bottle no matter where you are, whether it's at home or at work or out on a walk or whatever the case might be. Some people might plan to set like a daily reminder inside of their calendar. So there's so many different options to what a person could utilize to ensure that they are hitting that goal. But I would always say that it's essential for you to come up with a plan that makes sense for you, makes sense for your lifestyle, and is practical for you and realistic for what you want to do. So many times I see somebody make a plan that's like, oh, well, I plan to, I don't know, drink 50 gallons of water starting tomorrow. And that's, that's, it could be practical, but for a lot of people, it's not, especially if water is not something that you enjoy to drink or whatever the case might be. So, giving yourself realistic goals as well as giving yourself the opportunity to actually go into an environment that makes more sense for you, whether it's time wise, whether it's size, like measurement wise. Like some people might start off by drinking just a cup more than what they usually do, and then progress into drinking a bottle more than what they typically do, and then from there progress into drinking a gallon more than what they typically do. So it's really just up to you and what makes the most sense for you and your goal. So it's essential to take some time to plan that out and do not rush yourself. This is something that might take you a week or 2 weeks to plan, but I would encourage you to not take more than 28 days to go ahead and get that plan going. And I do say 28 days just because 28 days has a full cycle. Most months have 28 days. So it at least gives you a regular cycle to build on. And 28 days is divisible by 7. So, with that being said, it gives you a good plan to figure out what you're going to do for week 1, what you're going to do for week 2, what you're going to do for week 3, what you're going to get what you're going to get ready and get prepared to move into for that last week, and then starting a new fresh month, you're ready to go. Your boots on the ground, you're hitting the ground running because you've already set up some habits or routines or rituals to launch successfully into your new month. With that being said, that does tie into the third piece, which is the action towards what you want. So, some of that may look like some of the steps that I have already outlined, which would be creating like a 28-day plan to soft launch yourself into some of these actions. So, the plan, let's say going back to the plan is over the next 28 days or month, we're going to call the 28 days a month. Week 1, I'm going to do this. Week 2, I'm going to do this. Week 3, I'm going to do this. Week 4, I'm prepping to launch into my action plan and my habits. And then, of course, with that new month, we are getting started. So, tying in the plan and the action, week 1 is I'm going to start drinking just one more cup of water a day. The action associated with that would be possibly setting yourself an alarm for every 4 hours to remind yourself to drink that extra cup of water a day. So you might be drinking, and I say a cup as measurement, not necessarily just 1 cup of water, but it could be 1 cup of water. You might set a reminder at the middle of your day, whenever you wake up or whenever you work or whatever your daily routine might look like, you might set a calendar or an alarm to wake you up or to alert you in the middle of your day. And that action is what's going to trigger you to take in that one extra cup of water a day. For your second week, you might move into setting 2 alarms per day. That way, you are drinking 2 more cups of water per day. And then from there, you're progressing because your ultimate goal might be to drink a gallon of water um, more than what you usually do. Once again, we're starting off, like I said, sizable goals, things that are digestible. So you don't have to just start off by saying, I'm going to drink 8 more gallons a week. Right now, we're moving into just increasing your intake so that you can take in 1 extra gallon more than you would have normally done. So that third week, we're increasing it. And then that fourth week, we're once again setting those alarms as often as possible or setting those measurements as, you know, large as possible so that moving into your launch month, that new month, you are ready to take in 1 extra gallon more than what you normally would have. So that would be the action. And then I always tell my people, make sure you understand that failure is part of the process. There's nothing wrong with failing. Sometimes we fail at things, a lot of times we fail at things. There's so many different quotes that's floating around in our society about failure, but the key thing is to know that because you failed at something does not make you a failure. So it just means that there's like a systems check that's happening there. Failure gives us information. So, say for instance, you do it. You do the first 28 days according to plan. But then when you launch into the new month, you have no desire, no taste for water, no motivation to even move into that step. And that's okay. What we do when those situations present themselves is we take a step back and analyze, why do I not feel like doing this? Sometimes you don't feel like doing this because it's not your actual goal. It's something that you heard was trending, or it's something that somebody superimposed on you, or it's a concept that does not belong to us and we have no true motivation behind it. Sometimes it's because we do not have the right support systems behind us or motivations behind us to continue to motivate us to want to accomplish this. So, say for instance, let's say nothing wrong with drinking beer or consuming alcohol in any way, but let's just say in this example, all of your friends drink beers. All of your friends are avid drinkers. They consume a lot of alcohol, not a lot of water at all. Being around this friend group might motivate you to not want to consume as much water, just because that's the dynamic of the relationship and that individualized or micro community that you're in. With that being said, it's essential to acquire more friends or acquire more people in your environment that does encourage drinking more water. Another kind of failure would look like you just fell off. Sometimes when you're creating new habits for yourself or new routines for yourself, you just fall off. So, say for instance, you were doing really good, you have the proper motivations, you have the proper supporting community, but this week, here we are, let's say we're 8 weeks in, moving into your ninth week, you just fall off and you don't drink your whatever it is per day, your gallon per day, or your 5 cups per day, or whatever the measurement that you've created for yourself. Being able to have coping skills in those moments, self forgiveness in those moments, as well as knowing that just because you fell off today doesn't make you a failure. You can always pick right back up tomorrow. So, reassuring yourself just so that you know that just because one thing happened does not mean that all else has failed. And then just recovering, saying to yourself, okay, well, this is this time where I fell off. I didn't mean to not drink my 8 cups of water this day, but you know what? That's okay. I'll be okay. My world and my reality will be okay. Starting tomorrow, I will go ahead and get back into drinking my 10 cups of water or whatever the case might be. In addition to that, the next step would be revision of the plan. So that might look like, okay, so, and like I said, failure gives you a lot of information about yourself, about your situation, about your goals, etc. So revising the plan might look like, okay, maybe I can't consume 8 cups of water because it's too much for me. That's overwhelming to me. I don't like it. I feel nauseated after that. So revising the plan could look like, well, once again, revisiting why am I doing this? Is it to live healthier? Why do I want to live healthier? Is it because I doom scrolled on social media and I happened to fall into a rabbit hole that said, oh, 5 ways to be healthier, and I wanted to follow this routine? Is it something that I actually do cherish or hold near and dear to me? Or is it something that's wrong with the technique that I'm utilizing to approach it? So maybe I don't like the kind of cup I'm using or measurements I'm using, or I don't like the time of day that I'm implementing this, or I don't like the results specifically. So, say for instance, you're adding the additives to the water, like the flavoring to the water, so that you can drink more. But it seems like when you drink a plain cup of water, you're fine. But when you add the additives, you're a little bit jittery or you have a migraine. So that makes you not want to drink the water. So sometimes it's just a matter of the method that we're using. Sometimes we have to go back and revise the whole goal and why we're doing it. And then also sometimes it is, once again, the people and situations or circumstances that we have around us. So sometimes you're doing this thing and you might have outside influences who are like, why are you doing that? That's not smart to do, or that's not like a good thing to do, or I wouldn't do that if I was you. And sometimes getting away from certain people, certain environments, or specific mindsets or concepts would also help you accomplish your goal. And then last but not least is now that we've gone through why we're doing it, what we're going to do to accomplish it, we've experienced some failures. Maybe we spent 3 or 4 months doing something, but then fell off for a whole month. And that month could teach us that, you know what, ABC is the issue here. Let me try to do this a different way. Let me try um, GHK in order to accomplish my goal. Now we're going to go ahead and move into that execution again and just trying it all again. So it is kind of a rinse and repeat until we are able to accomplish that goal that you set in mind. And like I said, sometimes the goal is not ours. So when that becomes a reality where it's like, okay, well, this is not practical for me. Like, say, for instance, you want to be a famous track marathon runner. That's something that you've always or wanted to accomplish. That's a goal that's always been very near and dear to you. You watch the Olympics quite often. Every weekend when there's like a local marathon going on for like breast cancer awareness or any additional cause that you might feel near and dear to you, you take that opportunity to run. However, you were recently in an accident that left you paralyzed. Maybe you're permanently paralyzed, maybe you're temporarily paralyzed, but because of that, you're not able to accomplish that bigger goal. Sometimes a revitalization or a restructuring, I mean, of your plan would be something that we would revise in the revision state. Like, okay, well, this is something that you wanted to do. However, there's physical limitations, or there's time limitations, or there's mental or psychological or emotional limitations that prevent you from getting that goal. When situations like that arise, you have to decide in that moment whether in the future if this is something that you're willing to accomplish so you can table it. So for now you can say to yourself, you know what, I'm not able to accomplish this goal, but I'll work on a different goal. Or you know what, I can't do it right now, but I've been doing physical therapy and they say that I should be better in the next 4 or 5 months. In that case, you'll go ahead and table that goal and you'll continue to work on your plan in about 4 to 5 months or whenever you're medically cleared to go back to doing this goal of yours, you go ahead and, continue from there. Sometimes it's a situation where it is a permanent change in your life. And that comes with sometimes grief, that comes with some stress sometimes because now you have to take some time to figure out what you want to do now that might be completely different than what you initially set out to. And, if need be, we can talk about that separately. But those are just also some of the realities that I do want to bring to your attention because it does happen. And what I want to do is always prepare my people for just knowing what we're getting into, how we could be best equipped in those moments, as well as how we can overcome in those moments. So sometimes, because of a physical, mental, emotional, psychological um, restriction, we might have to figure out a new plan. So when that happens, we rinse and repeat. We develop coping skills, we develop more mindset, awareness, and we recreate our situation so that we can go back to the sizable goals, the 1 through 6, and execute from there. So moving on into our next slide would be the SMART goals. So ultimately, the SMART goals go into some of the subcategories of what the 6 steps previously spoke about. So one is the goal. Two is the specifications of the goal. Say, for instance, your goal is to be healthier. Some of the specifications may look like to be healthier, I need to run more. I need to drink more water. I need to clean up my diet. I need to eliminate carbs from my diet. I need to, and the list might go on and on. I encourage you, especially if this is a new goal for you, something that you have not already incorporated into your life and your regular routines, to only set yourself 2 to 5 specific goals. And when I say 2 to 5, not specific goals, I'm sorry, but specifications related to your goal. I say two because that's sizable. It allows for you to practice with that. And then once you get good, you can add more from there. But don't go off making more than five little changes to accomplish your goal because it may become overwhelming. You may get burnt out, and then you'll be less likely to succeed at accomplishing this new goal. The third thing to keep in mind is make sure that it's measurable. So going back to like I said earlier, your goal is to drink more water. You're starting off with, maybe drinking one extra glass a day. Then you move into drinking two extra glasses a day, and so on and so forth. So make sure it's measurable. For all of my people out there, I'm really big at individuals having different learning styles. So sometimes that might be getting one of those giant gallon things that has like the lines on there so that you can actually check off the fact that you've drunk an extra cup that day or whatever the case might be. Sometimes it might be a checklist. So having that reminder in your phone or physically pen and paper or even a calendar where you're checking off that you did that task that day will help you envision that measurable concept to make sure that you're achieving that goal. Of course, the next part of that is achievable. So that goes back to, like I said earlier, making sure that these are sizable goals. If you're a person that's never worked out before or never did any exercises before or never cared about like your health or the way that you eat or consume food, if you just woke up one day and was like, you know what, I want to be a huge bodybuilder by the end of the month, that's not achievable at all. Like, you cannot achieve that. Like, I mean, you can try. I think it would be very dangerous, but the reality of it is that you will not be a ginormous bodybuilder that can lift a car, can lift a F-150 in 28 days. So make sure that you are selecting a goal that is achievable to you. There's a lot of things that are achievable and flexible when it comes down to different goals and things that you want to accomplish, but you do have to ensure that they are achievable, whether, like I said earlier, with the specifications, the measurements, or within your abilities. Sometimes this is like a caveat to that, but sometimes it might be an ability that I won't even say ability. Let's scratch the word ability. It might not necessarily be in your repertoire or your Rolodex. Like, say, for instance, you want to learn a new language. Some people might approach that like, well, I don't know Arab or I don't know German, so that's not achievable because I don't know. And the thing with learning a new skill, such as like a new language, is that you already have that base and that foundation. The fact that you can speak a language currently means that you are capable of learning a new language. The fact that you have that curiosity and that drive to want to learn a new language means that these are achievable for you. So don't allow for concepts or ideas to scare you away from achieving it just because it might not be something that you currently do or currently practice. You don't need to know 100 Spanish words to be great at Spanish. You need to have the drive, the ability, and the focus to learn a new language. Sometimes it's also the environment, being in a specific environment that encourages learning as well as encourages the practice of that new language could make that more achievable to you, more or less achievable, depending on the situation. The next component is relevance. So it has to be relevant to you. Once again, why are you doing this? If you're doing this because you were doom scrolling on TikTok and they said the 5 ways to make $100,000 in 30 days is XYZ. Waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, doing a cold plunge right after that, jumping into a pool right after that, and then eating only eggs for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's not relevant to you. That's not relevant to your goals. That's not relevant to anything that you want to accomplish if your main goal is to just have a healthier lifestyle. So going back to the basis, why are you doing this? If A, you want to have a healthier lifestyle, some of those things may work for you. Some of those things may be relevant to you. But say, for instance, you're a night person. You've always been a night person. You were always late to school. You were always late to work when you were scheduled to work at 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning. You feel your best between 5 p.m. and midnight. Then, yeah, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning just because a TikTok said that will not be relevant to you and your lifestyle. However, that cold plunge might be relevant. That change in your diet might be relevant. Doing specific activities might be relevant if your main goal is to have, quote unquote, a healthier lifestyle. And then last but not least is the time bound. So it's very important to set realistic time constraints around what you're doing. I think that it's relevant to be mindful of who you are and what works best for you. Say, for instance, if you're a person that does not perform well under pressure, some time constraints for you could look like, you know what, I want to be healthier. So this month, I'm going to set XYZ goal. So giving yourself the full month to accomplish that one goal or that one routine or that one new habit is a better time constraint or a time bound versus saying every 30 minutes I'm going to do this, and within the next 30 minutes I'm going to always do this, or every hour I'll always do this. So like, for example, some people are motivated by saying, you know what, hour one of my day I'm going to do push-ups, hour two of my day I'm going to do a run, hour three of my day I'm going to take a rest, hour four of my day I'm going to eat, every hour five of my day I'm going to do jumping jacks. Some people are motivated by that, and if that is your motivation, that's great. But set a goal and a time constraint that makes the best sense for you and who you are in your situation. That way, you can always set yourself up for success and make sure that you are in alignment with yourself, your spirit, as well as the goals that you're setting for yourself. I think one method that a lot of people do use and like, and I always get it like the pronunciation of it wrong, but I think it's like the Pomodoro or the pomade something. But to make a long story short, I've seen online for years now that sometimes people set a window of 30 minutes, and then for 25 minutes of that 30 minutes, they're doing whatever the task is, whatever, whether it's working on a project, whether it's art, whatever it is. And then that last 5 minutes of that 30 minutes cycle or window, they take some sort of break. They take a walk, they take a pause in their work, they do whatever makes sense for them. Maybe they were working on a project for work for the 25 minutes, but then that last 5 minutes they just spend doodling or writing a creative poem to themselves or whatever the case might be. If that or that kind of method works for you and is achievable for you, then you are more than welcome to go ahead and do that so that you can go ahead and accomplish those goals that you've been thinking of. Next is our to-do list. This does apply to some of the stuff that we are talking about. It's not essential, but for some learners and some creatives, I do think that it might be vital for what they want to do and what they want to accomplish. So it's important to have a list of priorities: high priority, medium priority, and low priority. And that can look different depending on what goals you have as well as what you're trying to accomplish. Sometimes what this can look like are some of those bigger goals that we divide into several smaller goals. So say for instance, you want to become a doctor. Let's just use that for an example. You want to become a doctor. The main priority for that is making sure that your grades are good. So in this situation, even though that big, giant, humongous colossal goal is to become a doctor, we will put become a doctor inside of the low priority box. So with inside this box right here, I can't type and edit in it right now, but if you want, you can take a screenshot of this and then print it out, turn it into a PDF or whatever makes sense for you, a PNG. And in the low priority box, you will go ahead and put become a doctor. Some of those high priority tasks that you need to get done that will lead you to becoming a doctor would be getting good grades, having a good reputation and community or network with other people. So that might mean having a great relationship with your local community center, having a great relationship with your teachers, having a great relationship with other providers because you might need letters of recommendation at a later point. You might need volunteer hours. You might need exposure to the field to make sure this is something that you want to do. Like, say, for instance, you want to become a doctor. Even being a doctor falls into so many categories. So, say, for instance, but let's say cardiologist, you want to be a cardiologist. So you volunteer at your local hospital for a month, and then you realize there's no way I could become a cardiovascular doctor or a cardiologist, not because you're not capable or have the wit or the smarts, but this is boring to you. Like, this is not something that you actually want to do. You don't like their day-to-day routine. Let's go back to being a morning person. You hate that you have to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to be at the hospital. This is not something that you want to do. So, having those high priority goals that lead to your bigger goal is essential because they allow for you to do the 6 steps that we mentioned earlier, which, just as a reminder, I'm going to go back. The vision, the plan, the actions, failing, revision, and execution. So say for instance, on one side, side A, your vision is to become a cardiovascular doctor or a cardiologist. Your plan is to get good grades, volunteer at your local hospital, and maintain positive relationships. The actions related to that is reaching out to your guidance counselor to connect you to different groups that allow for you to get the experience. But you learn in this action that you do not like this schedule. You learn in this action that you have a hard time reading the ultrasound images. It just doesn't make sense to you. You learn during this action that you don't like the work politics or dynamic. You learn in this action that for the amount of schooling that you have to do, it might not be beneficial for you because you might not want to do 12 years of school, or you might not like the pay, or you might not like the type of work. In some medical fields, you have to be responsible for utilizing small equipment and cameras in order to make sure that you're providing care to individuals. You might not like any of that. So that's when we move down to the failure part. And I I'm going to call it failure because it is a common term, a thing that we realize. But I do also understand that the word failure does kind of have like a sting to it. So if enlightenment feels better to you or sounds better to you, you can, instead of calling number four failure, you can call number four the enlightenment period. And then it comes the revision. So you learn through your actions, your plans, that you do not want to be a cardiologist. That job does not work for you. So when it comes down to your vision, you might revision yourself being an ear, nose, and throat doctor. That's still a doctor, it still pays well, but now you're dealing with bigger components of the body or a different tool set that you might utilize to help a person, or you might have a different kind of patient load, or the job doesn't seem as stressful as being a cardiologist. Whatever the case might be, that's when we move into, once again, going through that 6 step plan and realizing, okay, cool. So some of those high priority things will still be in alignment with that end goal. So you still have to keep up your grades. You still might have to do volunteer hours. Some of the other things will be to graduate on time. Maybe you have a specific time frame that you want to accomplish this. You want to get it done in 12 years. So what that might look like is making sure that you have proper financing or funding, and with that comes specific deadlines for scholarships or application deadlines or test deadlines, like for your GRE or MCAT, LSAT, etc. So these things will fall into your high priority. And then there is the medium priority. Like, for example, Your medium priority may be the fact that going back to like a GRE or MCAT or something like that, you don't have to do that right now, but you do need to get it accomplished before you move into actually becoming a doctor. So, as long as you're doing all of your high priority steps first, that might include also enrolling yourself into some kind of like study group or organization that specializes in helping people pass their LSAT or their MCAT or their GRE. But that's something that is kind of on the back burner for now. So finding those resources would be a medium priority for you, trying to figure out, okay, well, which organization has the record of a 90% pass on the MCAT or whatever the case might be. So that's what that would look like. I'm really big on sizable goals. So make sure that when you are completing this form that you are creating sizable goals for yourself. And of course, if they're ginormous and humongous and big, that's great as long as that's the perfect size for you. All right, moving into the next slide. This is just an example of a weekly planner. So, some individuals do benefit from creating like a daily regimen for themselves to make sure they are accomplishing those goals. I know me personally, I love looking at these, but sometimes I have a hard time committing to the specific things to do per day. So, I always offer to individuals because of that, that depending on where you fall, this is a great mechanism. On Mondays, I do this, this, and the third. On Tuesdays, I do this, this, and the third because it helps you maximize your time and make the most impact for yourself during those times. But for other individuals who that might cause like anxiety or this might not be a good method for them, I would say you can create these, but do not give yourself or utilize weekly planners, but do not give yourself essentially don't be hard on yourself. So if you can't get to XYZ on Monday, that's okay. Maybe you can do it on Wednesday. You might not be able to do your Saturday plans on Saturday, but maybe you can move it into the Monday plans or whatever case might be because life does happen. So situations and circumstances do arise. So there's always flexibility in your schedule, but do make sure that you are creating yourself a routine that is in alignment with your goals and what you plan on doing for yourself. This kind of falls into, like I mentioned earlier, that this is just a more exhaustive or extensive list of creating a planner for yourself. So maybe like these meetings, for example, we have our wellness Wednesdays every second Monday of the, I mean, excuse me, second Wednesday of the month. And then we also do our coffee chats every third Tuesday of the month. So for me and my lifestyle and what I have going on, I plan these things once per month. In between that, you may have more regular things that you do, like maybe every Monday you work out, or every Monday, Wednesday, Friday you work out, or maybe every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday you make sure you read a chapter from a book because maybe your goal is to read 100 new books this year or 30 new books this month. Maybe your goal might be to travel. So maybe or travel more. So maybe every Saturday and Sunday when you're off work, or maybe you have a schedule where you're off on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, you plan a trip to go somewhere. Maybe you catch like a cheap flight or you drive somewhere. Whatever your goal is, this kind of helps you make sure that your monthly routine is in alignment with your goal. So, say for instance, going back to our previous example of being healthier, that's a goal that could last for your lifetime. So every year could look a little bit different. Maybe this year you'll work on your diet. So every month you'll create yourself some kind of schedule or written routine that aligns with that. And then next year you'll work on your psychological health, or your emotional health, or whatever the case might be. So, or even your career health. So, health can be an expansive word as well. And I do believe the next one is a yearly planner as well. Yep, there it is. So I really like these. I like planners in general. I think they're a great resource as well as support tool. But like I said, let's say your goal is to read 100 books this year. You might pick January to read um, certain or specific genres or subjects. Um, you might utilize February to go to different book launches and to pick up new books from new creators or new authors. You might use March. We're currently in March, which is Women's History Month. You might use March to read only women authors. And the list can go on and on depending on what your goal is. All right, so here are our exercises for today. I selected these exercises from my published book, Unshaken Peace. And the first exercise is name 5 things that you are great at. And then the second exercise is in what ways could you reprioritize yourself this week? So these practices are designed to help you become grounded in your goals, your visions, and your execution of your next steps. I think it's super important to think about how you've been doing, you know? So, like I said, with the first one, name 5 things that you are great at. That can tie back into the goal specifically, or it can just tie back into gratitude to help motivate yourself to continue on the path for your goals. So, like for example, and you can practice this weekly, daily, monthly, whatever the case might be. But for example, you could say, let's say, going back to the health example we've been using, 5 things that I did great or that I'm great at would be focusing on myself, focusing on my goals. And that's pretty vague, but it could be as specific as today I made sure that I added lemon to my water to accomplish my 1 cup per day goal or something of that nature. And the same could ring true with the second prompt as well. In what ways could you reprioritize yourself this week? So, say for instance, you didn't have your cup of water. So, you'll say, this week I plan to reprioritize myself by setting an alarm in my phone to remind me to drink my 1 cup with lemon to accomplish my bigger goals this week. All right. So we are coming to the end of our wellness lesson today. So, this is a perfect time for any important reminders, notes, links, dates, and where you can find us. But before we get into that, I do have 3 videos that I found on TikTok that I would like to share with you. Once again, this is not copyright infringement. This is for educational purposes only. This whole deck has been for educational purposes only and is not considered anything that I'm copying or anything that I am taking from a different creative. This is something that I'm clearly spitting from the dome. So, for educational purposes, I will go ahead and play these videos.
You do have to think about yourself because nobody else is thinking about that for you. Everybody else is too busy thinking about themselves. And so this idea of being selfish shouldn't feel like such a foreign thing for women or a dirty word for women. It's like you have to be. There is no other way to get ahead and to do what you want to do. You have to put your needs and your wants and your ambition first because no one is going to do that for you.
Love yourself more. Make yourself a priority. People's opinions. Choose you.
Get more done while not feeling depleted, feeling energized, feeling like I could serve everyone and serve myself. Putting me at the front of my line has been a constant lesson I get to learn and relearn and be committed to learning. The moment we realize that no one is coming to rescue us from our schedule, the demands on our lives, like, because we don't need to be rescued. We just need to properly plan. Constantly reminding myself that with all the demands on my life, I fit in that, that I am my priority. For me, loving on my family and caring for my family is key. One of the most important things to me. And I get to be constantly reminded that while there is a long line of people to be served by me, and I'm honored to serve those people, I stand at the front of my own line.
With all that being said, ultimately, this is the lesson. Those three videos I picked out just because I felt that they were thoughtful and in alignment with our presentation today. I think that ultimately, when we are thinking of maximizing ourselves, we have to prioritize who we are. We have to prioritize our goals. We have to prioritize ourselves. We have to prioritize what we value. So ultimately, in order to maximize your life, that's the key. Um, I think there's several other keys which we'll discuss next week. We will, and now let's get into like some of the reminders and things like that. So some important reminders and dates. When it comes down to the reminders, like I said, we have to prioritize ourselves, our goals, our ambitions, and make sure they're in alignment with who we are and what we want to be, who we want to be, and how we want to be in this life. So that's just an important reminder. I have no important notes right now. I think we did a very good job touching on each subject, as well as if, like I said, if you have any comments or questions or things to add to the conversation, you're more than welcome to. I always am happy to have conversation that we all can participate in, as well as the important links that you will need will be in their respective places depending on what platforms you'll find this in. I do have links for um, enrolling into our weekly chats. They are totally free. The only thing that I do ask is that coming into the conversation that this is something that will be televised. It's something that will be added to YouTube as well as other platforms. And it may be added to my site. Um, Depending on when you see this, it may or may not already be added to my site. And it's because it's a free resource that's available for others. Ultimately, some of the conversations that we have, some of the questions that are presented, some of the ideas that are shared are super beneficial to other people who may or may not have been able to attend this session. So I always post those as a free resource because I do believe that wellness and growth should be something that is accessible. Sometimes you can't afford to pay for a session. So, once again, I just want to say thank you so much for joining in on this conversation. I do feel that it was super beneficial and that it will help and inspire someone out there. And then, of course, if there's anything else that you need, or any subjects that you would like to talk about, or any concepts that we have yet to cover, or that you think would be really cool to cover, please reach out to me. I am totally open to hearing from you. The newsletter is live. So here you go. The newsletter is live. So you can go ahead and click on that. And then once you do, it will take you to a new page that allows for you to put your name, your email, enrollment status is just for like if you want to opt into newsletters or if you don't want to opt into newsletters, which will be important in a moment. Your phone number is not required, but if you would like to put it, you can. And then comments. Comments is for if you want to just shoot me a quick question or have like a thought or a concern or something like that. And from there, you will be good to go. So, like I said again, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you all about this subject. I do plan on having the slideshow available as a downloadable item or digital download, you should be able to download that from Canva. You may need to create a Canva account, but do keep in mind that Canva is totally free. But I don't think you have to. I think you could if you want to, but you should still be able to just download it for free without any of that. And then, of course, like I said earlier, this chat will be available on YouTube as well as through all other social media platforms where you can find me. So, once again, I do look forward to our next chat. Like I said, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Also, you can use that newsletter option for questions. Like, say, for instance, you're like, hey, I just saw your video about how plants can inspire positive frequencies or vibrations. Where can I find out more about that? Or where can I find out more about your sessions? Or, hey, I would love to have a session with you, but I can only afford to have an hour session with you for $35. How do I sign up for that? And you can go ahead and once again go through the newsletter, click the opt out option because you're just asking me a question, and then go ahead and put your question in the comments as well. So, once again, I enjoyed being with you guys today. I enjoyed having this conversation with you. I know that, like I said, it's going to inspire someone out there to live their best life and maximize themselves. And I just look forward to our next conversation. So, have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to talking to my peoples again soon. Bye.